Meet Els Dragt. She has spent an amazing 23 years researching trends, and she's now helping teams to learn how to explore trends both through trend pilots and through collaborative training.
Being a trend spotter is just one part of the whole trend research process because the value is mostly in.
Els is also an accomplished author and has published Dare to Ask and How to Research Trends, a comprehensive guide on trend research. In our conversation today, we'll delve into misconceptions about trends.
Often people use the word trend for something that's like popular with the masses already, whereas I would use it for something that is emerging, often from the fringes.
How to start researching trends. She discusses her trend levels framework, which includes signals, values and needs, and driving forces, providing a structured approach to researching trends.
A lot of people are actually afraid of other people. So I see them hiding behind numbers, behind their screens. But if you really want to understand drivers and motivations and values and all these emotions that come with these signals and with these changes, that's really hard by only doing quantitative research.
Challenges with trend research. She highlights the challenges that many companies have when engaging in trend research, particularly dealing with uncertainty. You've built your career on researching trends, but that's not something that is all too common, let's say. So how do you convince organizations, businesses to start looking into trend research?
Often when I talk with companies and people that are interested in trends, the first thing that I do is that align on the word trend, because the convincing is mostly because people maybe have some kind of misconception or a different view on what a trend is than I have and that many trend forecasters have. The general stereotype is often, oh, trends are like about hypes and fads, and it's all about styles or gadgets and what's hot and what's not. And then companies often think like, okay, what should I do? This is fleeting information, why should I want to use it? So that's often where the convincing goes into, that you say like, oh, but yeah, actually I approach it in a very different way. I think trends are shifts in values and needs, and there are signals that show you already the evidence that these are changing, and these play out in a more long-term way and actually don't have to be fleeting fads or hypes at all. So you can really use it for planning for your long-term strategy, for instance, or use them in your innovation processes, and then it becomes a totally different conversation.
So if I understand correctly, the companies approach you because they want to delve into trends, but they have a different understanding of what trends are, and they're not quite sure what to do with the research that they have. Can you go a little bit more into detail on what a trend is for you?
I use a framework to build on before you start your whole trend research process. And it's always that I will discuss and have conversations around what type of theories and frameworks a company or client wants to use. But it really helps to have a bit of guidance, of course, without it becoming too rigid. So what I use is called trend levels. So you have the signals. These are the very observable changes you can see already in the world happening, offline or online. These can be products, services, artworks, academic new models, new business models. It can be initiatives by citizen collectives. So it can be anything. It can also be like a sticker you see hanging on a wall somewhere which says, I want to change something, and then a specific message of change. Those are the signals. They are the evidence. So like empirical research evidence that helps you to underpin your trends. Then, of course, there are like the levels that I call values and needs. So these signals are talking, they are saying something. Someone wants to change something and hence has created this artwork or this product or this business model. what are their motivations? What are their drivers? What kind of needs do they want to fulfill with this new thing? That's what you want to answer on the values level. And then there's like the driving forces level, which is about movements that have been going on already for a longer time that you don't have personally control over, like urbanization, an aging society, um, digitalization, or also technology that has already been going on and developing for a longer time, like quantum computing or AI or these kinds of things that you can also take into account. So these are like signals, values, forces. And that, when you analyze it in that way, what you see, you get like a enriched trend story.
Is there a change, or is there a gap between having the research on trends and putting that into practice? So for the company to change something based on the research that they've done, and how do you help companies do that?
Yeah, I often also help them do the research. So it's not always the case that they have their own research, or maybe they bought an external report and then they don't know what to do with it. And so I always, my approach personally is, learning by doing. So let's go through the whole trend research process together so you can feel all the uncomfortableness and the ambiguity and the uncertainty that also yeah feeds into this whole trend research process. um, and then you can much better think about, like, okay, which of these activities during this whole trend research process do I want to also integrate into my own company? Do I want to do myself? Which ones would like to have executed by others? And you can have a very different conversation on a very different level with people when they have done it at least once. So that's a bit the thing that I'm promoting, is let's do it together at least once, like a trend pilot, and then let's talk about what you can change in your ways of working, and that will help you to apply trends in a better way. The challenge is mostly to have them look outside of their industry, because yeah, people read like all these industry magazines, blogs, newsletters. So they go to their industry trade shows. It's where their contacts, their network is. And actually to find also, yeah, and get inspired by unsuspected and surprising new developments. It's also a good idea to look outside of your industry, because in other industries they might do all kinds of very different things that might in the future also affect your industry, or that you can use for your innovation approach, to say like, oh, we can actually use also what they do in the food industry for our automotive innovations. To get these surprising combinations. So my job is also to stretch their scope.
How do you do that?
Yeah. So the first thing is also just send them out on the streets and say, find signals of change. That's one that I often use and that works very well. And the second is also to, for instance, I also in workshops or training situations, I also bring in magazines from all kinds of different topics that have nothing to do with their industry, and say like, okay, now for the next 15 to 30 minutes, just scan these magazines, tear out anything that you might think of, like, hey, that's new, that's interesting, without worrying that it doesn't link to your industry. Just also do like signal scanning, but then in weird magazines for them. So these are just like very little, subtle, easy exercises with a big impact. Because often people, after these types of exercises, they would say, "Huh?" Like when you speak to them, like a couple of weeks after them, they would say, "Oh yeah, I walk through my city now, or the way that I go to work And I see so many different things that I never noticed before because had such a different type of observation modus, like zombie modus, maybe. And now I've opened up more. And same goes for these magazines. They say like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And now I actually ask my friends for tips on podcasts and stuff. And these friends have nothing to do with the work that I do in my industry. But yeah, I get some more surprising information in.
Okay, so you send people out on the street to take pictures to identify signals. You give them magazines. You tell them to go and talk to people. Now, the first two, I understand, and I would know how to do it. The last one I understand as well. But how do you identify the right people? So you talk about change makers. You talk about front runners. How do I identify these people that I need to talk to?
Yeah, these are people that do something that challenges the status quo, and they do something that not everybody is doing. So that's kind of your uh, recruitment briefing, so to say. And sometimes people think that they have to be influencers or something, but they don't have to be, because they are actually not doing something to be popular or to make it popular. They are really doing something different from often an internal frustration or motivation, because something is not working. Okay, I will develop something myself. Um, and so they can also be people in your own neighborhood. Maybe they are amongst your colleagues, even that they have a hobby project in the evenings that they are working on that you don't know anything about because you only talk about your industry during work meetings and lunches. But you actually should be talking also about each other's private lives and what people are doing and what they know a lot of, what their interests are. So you can find them maybe even in your sports club, maybe in your family, maybe an uncle of yours is doing something that's quite different or new, or often we don't even know because we don't talk about all these subjects with each other. So just because sometimes people can feel like, oh, I have to find a super interesting front runner or change maker. But yeah, I would even say like first try to look around in your own network. Who do you know already? So it's all about all the time think like, oh, this sounds like an interesting person. Jot it down or make an archive of it yourself with all kinds of people that you find interesting to follow.
And does it work? I mean, do the companies continue doing trend research once you've finished coaching them?
Well, first they have to have like buy-in from their management so that they also say like, hey, you can dedicate time and money for the next couple of months uh, to learn this process and to experiment with it within our company, and that they will also allow other colleagues to also engage in this process so that it doesn't only hang on one person, so to say. Um, so that's really important that they have like this leverage from the directors or managers or whatever they are called in your company. Um, and they, of course, really have to want to do it also and learn to do it themselves and make the time in their calendars for it. Otherwise, I can already tell you upfront, it will not really work well. For me, I feel that a lot of people are actually afraid of other people. So I see them hiding behind numbers. They can just sit behind their screens, look at their computer, and use their Excel and SPSS, prints and. But if you really want to understand drivers and motivations and values and all these emotions that come with these signals and with these changes, and why front runners are doing what they're doing, I think that's really hard by only doing quantitative research, especially when we talk about emerging signals that are not adopted by the masses yet. How would you quantify it then? That when three people are using a specific innovation, what do you want to measure? So and also the openness of the future, yeah, is also of course not so easily quantifiable yet. So I think it's crucial to also feel comfortable with these more qualitative methods because they allow maybe for more this uncertainty and openness and understanding of values, needs, motivations, drivers, desire.
Can you tell me a little bit about your journey? So how did you come to do this? How did you get interested into trend research, and how have things changed in your journey?
I think I always like to observe and look at people and think about like why are they doing what they're doing. As a kid, I really liked these detective stories by Agatha Christie, and having to find out like who's the villain or who was the murderer, and trying to understand all the motives of all these people in the story. But I'm not actually a fan of murder and blood, so I thought like, okay, how can I, kind of be a detective, but without all this misery. While I was working as a qualitative researcher, I also encountered like the trend research part, and it felt for me like a very free way of doing research because the future is open. You can and have to find all kinds of change makers and front runners and uncover their motivations, why they do what they do, to understand these value shifts. And yeah, that's actually how I kind of got into this whole field.
Interesting, because essentially you became a detective, but you're identifying or you're trying to signals before the murder happens, because obviously in trend research, there's the earlier the signals, the sooner you can adapt and change things.
Yeah, although one of the things I also had to learn to not worry about too much is to always be the first to uncover a signal, because the value is mostly in understanding the values and needs behind all these signals, like identifying patterns and understanding this. So only being a trend spotter is just one part of the whole trend research process, so to say. So what I actually also learned by experience is that it's okay not to be updated all the time, 24/7 on anything. And actually, otherwise, I would not have a life anyways.
And in your role as a coach, what are some of the common challenges that you see people and organizations struggling with when engaging in that trend research?
Dealing with uncertainty, I think, is the biggest challenge for most people. Who loves uncertainty? I also wouldn't want my life to be like 100% uncertain in that sense. We all want to have some sort of grip or feeling that we have control over and influence on our situations. So when we talk about trends, yeah, and futures, there's a lot of uncertainty involved, and that also makes it, of course, difficult for people to, yeah, deal with this topic because they are often not used to dealing with this very, yeah, this high level of uncertainty in their daily work life. Everything often is catered and focused on targets and KPIs and I don't know whatever kind of metrics and annual planning and all kinds of meetings and steps in between to stay in control of the situation.
Mhm.
When you want to work with futures and trends, yeah, you will have to at least be a bit open and allow a bit of uncertainty, but it's more about exploring all the different directions these futures might go into. And the trends are actually the bridges from the now to these longer term futures. So they can help you bridge your knowledge about it and your experience, from the now to these futures.
And you mentioned targets and KPI. Uh, So are there companies that want to say, okay, but we're investing in trend research and we want some sort of return on investment? Is there a way to provide them with that?
Depends a bit maybe also on the type of company. So for instance, this Swinkels family brewers, they can now say, for instance, we have developed 3 new product concepts based on trends, and they've quantified those concepts with concept screeners, and they are now going to market with one of them. So then, of course, in the long run, you can say like, okay, it's been a success or not, but still, it's still quite hard to say like, and that's because somewhere at the beginning we started with a trend. So yeah, it's always a bit hard, like causal in the sense like, is it because of working with this trend, or did also some things happen along the way in our innovation process that also maybe made it a failure or a success? So that's it's still very hard to pinpoint, of course, what was the main reason for success. But you could also look at it from a different way. This is what I learned from my own clients. What they also quantify, for instance, to for the management, they say like, okay, we've run so many trend pilots, we've involved so many colleagues in trend sessions. I got so many requests internally for giving a trend presentation in teams in our company. I got so many questions emailed to me about trends. So they also kind of quantify the information need in that sense, to kind of substantiate that there's also a demand within the company for this type of information. That it's not just them or their small team of 2 to 3 people doing something with trends, but that it's really like flowing more throughout the whole company.
Looking back at all your experience, is there something that you wish you had known when you were starting off? So something that you know now where you think, when I was starting off, this would have helped me massively if I had known this.
Yeah, I think actually just like you don't have to be updated all the time. So you don't have to be like the signal hunter, and that you can only sleep 2 hours a day and have to be on top of everything. And actually, I also read this book that really resonated with the youth. It's called Stop Reading the News, Rolf Dobelli. And it actually kind of resonated with me because he also says like, don't look at the headlines, but read like the in-depth, reporting more to really understand what's happening in the world. Don't get blinded by all these fancy things thrown at you. Make sure you stay in control of your time and how to spend it.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.